Welcome to our Buyer Series videos. One of the most important things in buying a home is financing. So what I've done today is I've brought in one of the most well-respected mortgage bankers in town, Mike McFarland, to talk to us a little bit about getting a mortgage. So Mike, before we start, just kind of tell our viewers your qualifications, just so they know I didn't just drag somebody in off the street.
Thanks, Paul. I've been in the mortgage business for 22 years now. I've been an originator for 10 of those 22 years, and I've done various other things throughout the industry, all mortgage related, whether or not that's directly involved with the mortgage process or some of the ancillary services that happen around it. I also happen to have my Certified Mortgage Bankers designation, which is the highest designation you can get from the Mortgage Bankers Association of America. It just tells the industry, my peers, that I've gone through a lot of classes and courses to educate myself and to be an expert on the business.
Well, great. Well, we're definitely hoping that you can help educate my buyers. You know, we hear a lot of terms in the industry, and one of them is when they're going to get pre-qualified, they hear the term prequalification letter and pre-approval. Can you explain what is the difference between those two types of letters?
Well, there's a really big difference between those two types of letters.
Okay.
So let's take a pre-qualification. A pre-qualification is if we had a letter to go with an offer on a pre-qualification, it would be a pretty weak letter with any contract or offer that we submit. And the reason why it's weak is that it's just either verbal information that I received from the client, or maybe they completed an application, handwritten or online, but I haven't verified anything. So maybe I've pulled credit and credit looks good, but they've not provided any supporting documentation to verify the data that they've given to me. So that's a pre-qualification. Okay. A step up, or what I like to think of as making things really solid for an offer letter, would be get somebody to get them pre-approved. Okay. Now, a pre-approval letter is very powerful. It's like having a blank check in the hands of a buyer. And so what we do in a pre-approval is we actually get all the supporting loan documentation that I need to verify the data that's been submitted. So we look at credit, we look at tax returns, we look at paycheck stubs, I look at bank statements. I'm basically underwriting the loan file minus a property so that we have a pre-approval.
Got it. Well, that's a very good explanation. You know, sometimes I can kind of take the fun out of the process and burst people's bubbles because they get a pre-approval or pre-qualification letter, and my question to them is, well, what can you afford? Because depending on lifestyle and debt, sometimes there's a big difference between what they qualify for and what they can afford. So what is your best advice on, if you had someone in front of you, to tell them, looking at what they qualify for versus what they afford, and maybe even some of the things that you're going to look for, the underwriters are going to look for, as far as like maybe debt to income, things like that?
Absolutely. So, you know, I start off all of my conversations with how much monthly payment can you afford? What have you budgeted? You know, what's comfortable for you? A lot of times it's going to be comparable to maybe what a first-time home buyer is paying for in rent. Other times they have some breathing room to go up in that. So for me, it's really important to understand exactly what our clients can afford from a budgeted standpoint, not necessarily what they can afford from an underwriting standpoint or a guideline standpoint. So, for example, my client can come to us and maybe they tell us that, you know what, Mike, I can afford a $2,000 monthly mortgage payment. That's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, the entire thing. And when I qualify them, I notice that my underwriting guidelines will let me maybe take them up to $3,000, but that doesn't mean they're comfortable with that payment.
True.
So just because underwriting will allow me to go to, let's say, a 45% debt to income ratio, if the client's only comfortable with a $2,000 payment, then we need to really focus in on the $2,000 payment budget that they've given. Now, we're in an interesting market right now.
True.
Right? We got a seller's market, there's a shortage of inventory. So part of the balancing act is giving the client enough information that they can begin to make better decisions while they're shopping, especially in today's marketplace. So understand your budget's $2,000 a month. However, my guidelines let me take you up to $3,000. And what I'm seeing right now is that the homes that you're looking for are probably going to be going up in sales price, and we might need to expand your budget a little bit to get you in the home that you want. But by no means I don't want you to be comfortable. I need you to be comfortable with the mortgage payment. I just want them to understand what's happening in the market in relation to their home search.
Right, that's a good answer. And you know, as we know, especially with you being in the industry as long as you have, there are just hundreds of different loan types. What are just kind of some general basic guidelines as far as maybe a minimum credit score or maybe a minimum debt to income ratio? And if you can explain that a little bit, just generally, what do people need to think about when they want to obtain a mortgage?
Got it. So let's just start with FICO score real quick.
Okay.
Just take that one out real fast. At a minimum, ideally we have a 640 FICO score.
Okay.
We can go between 620 and 640, but the truth is it's really hard to get a loan done at that level. Lots of restrictions begin to come into play. So what I'm looking for is minimum of 640.
Okay.
That's for an FHA loan. You can look at conventional and you might be able to do 640, but more than likely we're going to be at 660.
Okay.
Okay. Now, in regards to debt to income ratio, so DTI is the language that we use in my world. The debt to income ratio is your percentage of your debt load expressed as a percentage of your gross monthly income. So, for example, let's say you make $1,000 a month, and my debt to income ratio maximum is 45% for a conventional loan.
Okay.
That means that I can dedicate $450 of your monthly income towards your debt load that shows up on your credit report, plus your new house payment.
Okay.
So that would be for conventional. For FHA, we can probably take that to about 50.
Okay. Good deal. You know, another thing is, as far as terms, a lot of people get confused on is we have mortgage brokers and mortgage bankers.
Yes.
And if you ask one or the other which one's better, they will always say that they are. Can you just explain a little bit of the difference between a mortgage broker and a mortgage banker?
Absolutely, I sure can, and that's a great question because it's a big difference in the ways that we function in the marketplace. So I'll start with the mortgage broker, and then I'll end it with a mortgage banker. So a mortgage broker is a loan officer that's out in the marketplace, and their job is to find the clients, take the loan application, and process the loan. And at that point, once they process the loan, they have a bunch of investors that they can send that loan to for underwriting.
Okay.
So they choose an investor out there that maybe fits the client best in regards to their loan qualifications, and then eventually trying to match that up with the best rate based on those qualifications. Part of the problem that they have in the broker world today is that they have to relinquish control over the loan file to the investor. So the investor's going to underwrite the loan, the investor's going to close it, the investor's going to fund it. You're also going to have the investor choosing an appraisal management company to send an appraiser out to the marketplace. And that appraiser may or may not be familiar with what's happening in that neighborhood that the home is that the buyers are purchasing. So there's some pitfalls in that arena. I think the biggest issue with the broker is, number one, the Dodd-Frank bill has really put a target on the back of the mortgage broker to make it hard for them to operate. They have unfortunately been given, they're taking the brunt of all the mortgage market fallout. So they just have a hard time really being quick and agile in the marketplace today. The flip side to that would be the mortgage banker, right? And that's what I am. I'm a mortgage banker, and the reason why I'm a mortgage banker is because I have complete control over the transaction. I process, underwrite, close, fund. I do everything in-house. So nothing gets away from me in regards to managing the transaction and making sure that we get to the closing table on time and basically with everybody's sanity intact.
Okay, which is a huge accomplishment in this business.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, you know, there's just hundreds of different loan types, and unfortunately we don't have time to discuss every one, or we'd be here for about a week. Let's just talk about a few of them, and one of the, I guess, more popular ones that people know about is a conventional loan. Give me a brief synopsis of what a conventional loan is.
So a conventional loan is, in the end, actually it's a mortgage-backed security. And that mortgage-backed security is a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac mortgage-backed security. So what we're doing is we're creating an investment for Wall Street. But from the conventional standpoint, our guidelines and underwriting are a little bit different. Okay. So what I look at in conventional loan is the minimum down payment requirement is a 5% down. The minimum FICO score, for the most part, is 660. We can go to 640 if you're putting 20% down.
Okay.
What else can I tell you about a conventional loan? Contributions from the seller are going to be are going to vary depending on how much down payment we have. So if we need the closing cost assistance from the seller, we can get that, but it's going to be 3% seller contributions at 5% down, 6% contributions at 10% down. So.
Okay. That sounds good. And I think of when I bought my first home, we were newly married, just had a baby, money was very, very sparse. We actually did an FHA loan, which I know is very popular.
Absolutely.
Give me a little bit of same idea of FHA loan, what that entails and what it's about.
Great. And I love FHA loans. FHA is a great mortgage product. So FHA is an FHA loan or a VA loan are actually what are called Ginnie Mae securities. So the secondary Wall Street market investment that's created out of that mortgage is called the Ginnie Mae security. So on an FHA loan, what you look at is 3.5% down, which is nice. So conventional has 5%, FHA has 3.5%. So if we're dealing with a cash issue, we get a little bit lighter of a down payment. Secondly, on an FHA loan, I can go down to a 640 FICO score across the board.
Okay.
So that makes things a little bit easier for us in that arena. And then the last thing that I think is really important about FHA loans is we can get up to 6% seller contributions at that 3.5% down.
Okay.
So when you look at Houston, Texas, you're thinking closing cost and prepaid items are running about 4%. FHA loans give us the ability to go to the seller and get all the help from closing cost and prepaid items that allow our buyers to get in with just their down payment.
Okay.
At 3.5%.
And let's say I come to you and I can't put 20% down, money's kind of tight, and I ask you, Mike, I'm thinking about going conventional or FHA.
Yeah.
How would you advise me on picking either one of those loan types?
It really depends on how much cash we really have to dedicate toward the transaction. So when I talk to a client, people think that, oh, Mike, I've got $10,000 or $20,000 to put down. But the truth is there's three things that make up our cash to close, and that's down payment, closing cost, and prepaid items. And if you have $20,000, is that $20,000 for a down payment? Or are you telling me that's $20,000 all in for everything we need?
Right.
Right? So the first thing that I need to do is to figure out exactly how much money we do have for the transaction. I'm a firm believer that cash is king. So I don't think we should put more money into a mortgage than what we necessarily need to, because we need liquidity after closing. There's going to be things you're going to want to buy once you do close, and we want you to give you the cash to do that. So I think we should go in with the least amount down that makes our payment comfortable for us. Many times it's going to lead us towards doing an FHA loan.
Okay.
Now the trick with an FHA is we're capped at basically a $272,000 loan amount in Houston, Texas.
Right.
So if we have buyers that are looking at loans that are sales prices in the 300s, well, we have to go conventional. But anybody that's less than 280 on a sales price will be able to do an FHA loan. Okay,
great. I'm sure we've all seen in the news that, and thank God our brave soldiers are coming home. And
absolutely.
One of the loan types that's specifically available to them is a VA loan, which we actually hadn't heard about in a long time because of the 100% financing. But give us a little bit of an idea of what is a VA loan, how does that differ from all the other loans,
absolutely,
and when you would advise one of our soldiers to take that type of loan versus one of the other ones.
So the first thing I tell you is this. Number one, I have seen a surge in VA business. So we were certainly seeing a lot more of it. Houston's not necessarily what you consider a VA town. When would I suggest a VA loan? At all times. The vet has earned a great benefit for being in service, in the military service. And so the VA loan allows us to get in with no money down. It also allows us to have no back-end monthly mortgage insurance premium. So when you have an FHA loan, you have a upfront mortgage insurance premium that's financed in the loan, and then you have a monthly mortgage insurance component. On a VA loan, there's an upfront premium that's financed, but there's no monthly component involved. So what I love about the VA loan is it allows us to get in with almost no money. I mean, very little in closing cost. There are certain VA non-allowable costs that are involved with the transaction that the vet can't pay for, which helps reduce their cost even more.
Okay.
So I love VA loans. I think they're great. Even with the vet that has money to put down, I would still suggest, hey, let's look at VA as an option. Right. Because there's some things that we can do in the VA world that lessens their down payment requirements. Heck, we can even do VA jumbo.
Wow.
Right? So
that's great.
Yeah. So and we can get somebody in for a 10% down on an $800,000 loan. It's crazy what we can do in the VA world.
Wow, that's
so
great.
So yeah, it's a really good product.
That's great. Well, Mike, I know you're a man of faith, but I need to say a bad word for our next question, and that is the ARM loan, adjustable rate mortgage.
Yeah.
It's almost a filthy word, just based on what's happened the last few years. But every once in a while I find a client that an ARM loan really fits what they're looking for. So when would you advise a client to look at an adjustable rate or an ARM loan?
So the first thing I'm going to tell you is I'm looking for a financially savvy client. I don't necessarily think an ARM loan is something that's for a first-time home buyer in most instances.
Okay.
So what am I looking for in an ARM loan? Well, I'm looking for how long does this person think they're going to be in the home realistically? You know, are they here on a transfer? Is this a transitionary home? If those are the cases, then I would say let's start talking about what an ARM loan can do for them. Now the downside risk is that ARMs these days are fixed for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years, and then they go adjustable every year thereafter. So the downside risk is that once they're over that fixed rate period, they are left to whatever happens in the marketplace in regards to fluctuations in rate, and then from there their payments recalculated. So we wanted to be real comfortable with, okay, one, what is your time horizon? Do you really have a good idea what that is? Number two, if you're really financially savvy and you're shifting that money more into investments because you feel like you can take that additional $500 and invest and earn more, well, that's okay. Then we need to talk about that because that's going to make sense. That kind of client's going to understand the risk associated with the ARM loan. And then finally, what I want them to be comfortable with is, look, if you're starting at a 3 3/4 interest rate, you may end up with an 8 3/4 interest rate, and you need to be comfortable with this increase in payment. And if you are, then okay, I think an ARM loan makes sense. It's not for everybody, and I don't sell a lot of them.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about something that kind of makes everybody cringe, and that is what items are needed to make a loan application.
Wow, I think of it as the twos, right? We need 2 years income tax returns, 2 years W-2s, 2 months worth of bank statements, basically 2 paycheck stubs.
Okay.
So really I'm looking for a month's worth of paycheck stubs, but 2 gets me going, just depends on how you're compensated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I look at the loan application, and I see the sheet that has where you have to list all of your account numbers and all your balances.
Yeah.
And another thing that just makes most people want to cringe.
Exactly.
Is there an easy way of just importing all that so a potential borrower doesn't have to go research all of those numbers?
Yeah. There's no way to import those numbers, right? But the easy way for us to do it is, and I tell my clients this, is that here's the deal. Complete the online loan application. Don't worry about your bank account information and filling it in.
Okay.
Send me the bank accounts and let me do that for you.
Okay, great.
Because I'm going to fill it in the way that I need it filled in anyway, and it's
Right.
going to be representative of what I want it to look like for underwriting purposes. So I tell them, don't worry about listing all your assets, just send me the statements.
Okay.
Don't worry about listing all your liabilities. I'm going to pull a credit report and I'm going to find out those liabilities.
Okay.
So I try to make it easier on them that way.
That's great. That's great. Because the process is, there's a lot going on, so anything we can do to save them some time and effort
Absolutely.
would definitely help. So,
Yeah.
Mike, you've been really helpful. We've kind of gone around with a bunch of questions, but just as kind of a closing, what other advice could you give a potential borrower or buyer on what they can do to make the process as easy as possible for everyone involved?
Yeah. I would say get pre-approved as early on in the process as you possibly can.
Okay.
Like there's never a bad time to get pre-approved. Obviously, we want to do it as soon as we possibly can, and for a number of reasons, and especially before they get in the car with you, right? We want to make sure that they're searching for the right sales price of home that they can afford. We want to make sure that their credit's okay and there's nothing that we need to repair or fix. We want to make sure that income looks good from an underwriting standpoint. So when a buyer goes to the marketplace to make an offer, there is a 100% likelihood that we're going to make it to the closing table. I tell everybody I don't lose patience on the operating table. We're going to do our due diligence at the beginning of the process to get you pre-approved so that I can guarantee you we're going to make it to the closing table.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for tuning into our Buyer Series video on obtaining a mortgage. We will have Mike's contact information below, and please feel free to call either of us with any questions.